So I've got a wiring harness here out of an M series machine that we're going to repair. You know, sometimes a rubbed spot or a short in the wiring harness is very difficult to find, but we got to know how to find those shorts and repair them correctly. We're living in really weird times, man. I mean, these harnesses, Bobcat, other manufacturers, it doesn't matter who it is having a hard time getting wiring harnesses for new machines, and getting the factories to make harnesses for old machines is getting more and more difficult. It's hard. A lot of machines just don't get harnesses. You just can't find them. You can't buy them anymore. You know, they're not a priority. It's not that the factories won't ever make them again. It's not a priority right now. So I'm going to show you how I go about just repairing this. I already went through it. I found a couple shorts and a couple rub spots, and I'll show you an example of kind of what that looks like and how I go about fixing it. So here's an example of a rubbed spot in this harness. This was kind of up near where the steering levers would be, kind of going right across the top of the chain case on the machine, and is very difficult to see. But you can see it rubbed through the protective insulation, rubbed through the insulation on the wires. I don't know if you can't really see that, but it actually rubbed through the copper. So we completely lost continuity on that wire there, and it looks like there's a couple wires in here that are damaged. One thing to notice on any of these wiring harnesses on any manufacturer is you're not going to see electrical tape anywhere. You know, and that's the thing, when we're repairing, we want to get a high quality harness tape, whether it's Tessa, this is X-Fasten. I'll leave a couple links in the description of tapes that I like to use, harness tapes, whether it's interior, exterior, high temperature, whether I'm working in the engine harness where we need some type of insulation from interference, or high temperature. So I've got several different tapes I use that we'll talk about, but when you're doing a harness, let's just get the right tapes when we tape it up. You know, electrical tapes just, yeah. You're not going to find, it just drives me nuts to open up a machine and see where someone's repaired a harness like this using electrical tape. It looks very unprofessional. So we're going to use a good harness tape. So I'm going to start by cutting back some of this insulation. You should never use a razor blade to cut this insulation back, but if you're real careful, you can cut this off without cutting, you know, through any of the wires underneath. Just barely rubbing across the top of it. Here's an example of where you will find electrical tape. They're just using it to bundle. No, that's not electrical tape either. That's harness tape as well. Sometimes I will see electrical tape inside the harness, but yeah, that's harness tape as well. So we have to cut this back far enough to where we can actually get the wires out, see what has happened, and see what we can repair. Okay, so after getting the insulation cut back a little bit, inspecting the wires, this one is rubbed a little bit, but it has not gone through the insulation. It hadn't got down to the copper yet. This yellow wire, on the other hand, has gone completely through the insulation and through the copper wire. So that was our problem with the machine, you know, and it was very difficult, I guess, for somebody to find that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to cut this in half, and we're going to cut back until we find a good part of the wire. A lot of times, we'll want to cut back far enough, it'll be green and tarnished and corrosion in there, and we'll have to cut back far enough to get rid of all that. So that's good copper there. Cut back to here. There's good copper there. Now see, we have to cut out the bad section of wire. So now this section of wire is not going to reach. We can't connect that. So what I've got is I keep a lot of different color wires on my truck or with me at all times. Is I want to cut a piece that's going to fit in there and take up that room. And I don't like to twist the wires together. I want to just put them in, just feed them into each other. You know, I don't know. Twisting the wires apparently causes some type of resistance or something in there. The straighter we can keep those strands, the better. So that's nice and tight. So what I like to use is my Milwaukee soldering iron. This thing is awesome, man. I've seen mixed reviews on the internet of this thing, but I keep this on my truck. I've had this for 2 years, and this thing works absolutely flawlessly. I like to use the flat blade. That way you can dab some solder on there and put it right up under the wire wherever you're working. This thing is awesome. Just a nice clean soldered joint, and just using my wet towel, I'm going to clean off that tip. And then we want to use some high quality heat shrink. I cut a piece that's going to completely cover this whole repair here. Okay, then I'm going to feed this side together. You gotta be real careful to make sure no strands are poking up, sticking up. That's going to, you know, stick through our heat shrink. That looks good. Here's an example of a factory harness where wires actually stuck through the heat shrink and was shorting to the frame. So it is something to be aware of. So that's just a very nice, clean solder joint. So now that both of those are soldered together, I will slide my heat shrink up over that. And just like I would never use a razor blade to cut open the harness, I would never use a torch on the heat shrink. So now that we've got this wire repaired, and I went through and I made sure that none of these other wires are damaged, we're going to go ahead and tape this up. Now again, I am using, this is X-Fasten. This is a really good tape that I really like to use. Right up there with Tessa, not Tesla, but Tessa tape. Also, all these are real easy to get on Amazon. I'm going to leave a link to all these on the in the links below. I'm going to start right here. So I like to leave enough where I can actually stick the two pieces of tape together. And that's where those two connections actually broke out of the harness. So we're going to tape it up. So now we got a nice, clean, professional repair. And when we put this harness back in there, we're going to make sure we tie that up to where it's not going to rub anymore. And this harness is going to last many more years, probably outlast the life of the machine as far as this goes. But I'm going to inspect the whole entire harness. If I see anything that I think needs to be repaired, I'm going to repair it before we put this back in the machine. So the harness tape I use, it's abrasion resistant, it's heat resistant, really good stuff. This is a Tessa. This is more of like a fabric-y type tape. It's kind of, I know it's hard to see, but this is also a good harness tape, but it's, really easy to tear by hand. But it's got a real soft outside to it, as opposed to this. This is almost like friction tape, almost like, and you can use friction tape as well, and I have. like you put on hockey sticks or something like that. That's really what this tape's like. And this is more softer, like a cloth, almost like my shirt. And I use this for like interior on automotive and what have you, and even inside the cabs of the machines, I'll use that type of tape. Now this tape with the shiny outside on it, this is what I kind of use in the engine harness, you know, especially like on the injector harness. This has got a really good heat resistance to it. It's got good insulation properties on it to keep any interference getting in from any of the lines that would be like susceptible to interference, any type of communication lines or anything like that. So Coroplast is another really good tape to have in your box. Avoid using electrical. Electrical tape has its place, but on these harnesses, I don't know that it does. You know, the stuff gets old, it melts, it gets sticky, it doesn't hold on. This harness tape is there forever. I mean, you can see that's what the manufacturer uses, and it just lasts. It's good abrasion resistant, and it's just really good stuff. So again, I just want to show you how I kind of fix these harnesses. We do it a lot. It doesn't matter the manufacturer of the machine. You know, harness is going to rub, harness is going to wear out, but in this day and age, we're going to have to repair our harnesses. We might have to take it out of the machine to find the actual problem. You're going to have to trace the circuit. I love doing electrical problems because you learn so much. You find the circuit that's affected. What's the problem? What's the code? What's not working? And then we find that circuit in the schematic, and then we follow that out throughout the harness. And sometimes it's tough to find out what connection is where and what have you, but that's how you learn. That's how you figure this stuff out, is doing it the hard way and finding that short, man. I don't always go right to it. I've got a lot of these colors and everything memorized now, what the greens are, the pinks, the oranges, the blues, the what other colors, greens, the purple, you know, your can wires. I've got them all kind of memorized now, but that's just doing it for so long. So again, like I said, is that you just, you know, there's going to be a time where you cannot get a harness for your machine. I've seen guys waiting, you know, 4, 5, 6 months, not able to get a harness, and when someone could have tore into it and found the problem. I mean, sometimes the plugs and the pins wear out and you don't have a choice, but even all that's repairable. Everything on this harness is repairable. So again, that's all we're going to talk about as far as that repairing on the harnesses. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Again, thanks for all your support. If you have any questions, please let me know.